this book is very challenging, Divrei HaYamim. And I want, because it's Perek Bet, and I wanted to make sure that everyone's on board. I want to backtrack a few minutes and do a little bit of what I spoke about last time in terms of introductory discussion, which could be helpful, I hope. So first of all, Divrei HaYamim, hopefully, and this is one of the things I thought about. Okay, Lillian. Okay, I see. First of all, one of the reasons I chose to continue with Divrei HaYamim as opposed to Nevi'im Achronim is that it's going to be a very good review for everything we learned in mostly in Shmuel and Malachim, and also a little bit in Yoshua and Shoftim, and we'll see that today. That's one. Reinforces a lot of our learning. And then in terms of this book in general, it's extremely neglected. It's a book people do not learn much, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. And there's a few things that I want to point out. When Radak started to explain the Sefer, he was like, nobody's ever talked about this. And when the Bible came along, he said, nobody really asked the whole question of like, what is it for? So one of the things that we should bring out, one of the main ideas that, people talk about is that the really, Divrei HaYamim, even though many things are similar to Shmuel and Malachim, let's say, and to other Sfarim in the Tanakh, it has a different focus, it has a different purpose, and that's really the main takeaway. Number one, when you compare specifically Malachim and Divrei HaYamim, right, you see that Yirmiyahu wrote Malachim, and his focus is, why did the Churban happen? What led up to the Churban? How did this go, so bad? And what was the problem? Now, Ezra Sofer, according to Chazal, Ezra wrote Sefer Divrei HaYamim, and it's important to understand that whenever we say somebody wrote a Sefer, that it's written with Ruach HaKodesh, and it isn't included in the Tanakh. It isn't part of the Tanakh unless it is a Sefer of Kedusha, a Sefer of divine inspiration. But the purpose that Ezra has is he's coming with the group of Jews coming back to Eretz Israel, and his purpose is to take a very dispirited nation, a very discouraged nation. They start building, they get stalled, things go the way they want, and his purpose is to take that inspiration for them from the Malchus Beis David. So when we started Perek Aleph, we started from Adam, and our goal, Ezra's goal, is to go straight to David HaMelech and discuss David HaMelech and his legacy, Shlomo Melech and his legacy. And so it's not in his interest to publish any of the downsides, let's say, to David's rule or Shlomo's rule. He wants to emphasize that the whole creation worked upward towards this pinnacle of Malchus Beis David, of David and Shlomo, and that is the glory that he wants the second temple period to come back to. And so his goal is to give inspiration. So that's an important way to understand the Sefer. Now, there are a lot of inconsistencies, things that are added, things that are deleted. When you go through Perek Bet, I'll show you some of the things, and how Chazal handle it, develop, depends a lot on how their philosophy, how we interpret history, how it works with this, with these inconsistencies. But they're actually all very interesting, and finding that the Sefer is actually quite fascinating, very deep, and it's sort of like a guessing game. When you hit a personality, like, oh, look at that name. Huh? I know this one. And I remember that story. And what's Divrei HaYamim going to do with it? And how are we going to go with that? So the Medrash describes this as Divrei HaYamim in general, all these genealogies. The first 9 chapters are genealogy. Chapter 10 is the Malchut of Shaul and its downfall, and then from Yud and on, it's all the Malchus based on it. Divrei HaYamim Bet, it's a similar pattern. The first 9 chapters are Shlomo Melech. The 10th chapter is the split of the kingdom, and from Yud to the end is the Malchus Beis Yehuda, with very little reference to the northern kingdom at all. It just doesn't interest Ezra so much. So that's the breakdown of the book. Now the Medrash says that this can be compared to a person who loses a pearl in the dirt, and he is sifting through the dirt to find the pearl, and that pearl is David HaMelech, and this is what we want to do, is to find that pearl. And that's why the genealogies it's just not consistent. It just doesn't, we're not focusing on the same thing. So we saw that in Perek Aleph, Adam Sheis Enosh, the first pasuk, we're not interested in Kaya, we're not interested in Hevel. They had no continuity. We're going straight as fast as we can through history in order to get to Yisrael, and that's the Perek Aleph. Okay, now so I'm going to screen share and we can go to Perek Bet. Okay, there is one more thing I want to show you, which is really fascinating, I think. Here, one of the midrashim that's interesting. Rav Simai said to him, and it doesn't say to him, Rabbi Yochanan, would you please teach me the Sefer Yuchsin? And he says, I need to learn it in 3 months. And this is the interesting. Rabbi Yochanan took a piece of dirt and threw it at him and said, Bruria, who was the wife of Rabbi Meir and the daughter of Rabbi Hananya ben Tradio, was so smart, and she was such a good memory that she learned 300 halachot in one day from 300 sages, but she still did not fulfill her responsibility to learn the Sefer Yuchsin, right, the book of genealogies, in 3 years, because it's so long and difficult. And you're telling me to teach it to you in 3 months? After this, an appropriate request, I'm not inclined to teach you at all. So that should give you a certain sense of how the Chazal look at Divrei HaYamim. Okay, so okay, one other medrash I'll point out to you, and that is the medrash that says that the whole sefer must be darshan. It can't be learned al derech hapshat, which is something to bear in mind. You cannot learn this book al derech hapshat. It's really there's too much stuff in here. Okay. Now, we moved in Perek Aleph very rapidly from Adam to Yaakov. In Divrei HaYamim, because we are glorifying the people here and describing their greatness, we don't call Yaakov Yaakov anymore. He's only Yisrael. Pasuk Aleph. Ela b'nei Yisrael, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zebulun. Pasuk Bet, Dan, Yosef, Binyamin, Naphtali, Gad, Bash. Now, something interesting here: the 12 sons of Yaakov, and here called Yisrael. This is not the normal order we're used to. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zebulun. Okay. Sons of Leah, done. Yosef, Binyamin. Odd, isn't it? Shouldn't Dan be together with Naphtali and Gad and Asher together, and why is Yosef and Binyamin together in the middle of Dan? And the Medrash says that if it wasn't for, and I have all these Midrashim open, and I feel like time is so short and the material is so much. If I open them all for you, we will not get there. It says we will not get there. But Becholzo, it's a beautiful medrash. The medrash says that, let's see, Rashi has it. Okay, I'll tell you what. I could maybe, what shall I do here? I'll maybe do this. Okay, this is a great resource for those of you who are interested. I know, Panina, you're teaching Tanakh now. Are you familiar with this one? It's great. It's a little difficult as a general rule, but in this thing you get a lot of references here. There you go. Dan Yosef Binyamin, right? קדימת דן ליוסף נמצא עוד פעם אחד בסדר מעשה, חז"ל אמרו במדרש מפני שבזכות דן נולד יוסף ובנימין. So the Medrash says, okay, gracious Rabbah, right? And Rachel brings in Bilhah, okay. Al Ken Karashmo done, right? This is the argument between Yaakov and Rachel. Rachel is upset. She has no children. She comes to Yaakov with kindness, and Yaakov says, it's not my fault. He's criticized for being a little harsh here. But her idea is, like he suggests that he mentions Sarah and Hagar, and she has the idea to bring him Bilhah. And after Bilhah has done, right? So then she goes on to have children. So according to the Medrash, the reason that Yosef and Binyamin are here between Dan and Naphtali was if it wasn't for Dan, if it wasn't for Rachel's bringing in Bilhah and having Dan born, she would not have been Zohar to have Yosef and Binyamin. This is our maybe one of our first lessons. This tremendous selflessness that Rachel exhibits is rewarded. I mean, first with giving the signs to Leah and then bringing in Bilhah. She's a very unusual and selfless person. And the Ralbag, in one of his toelets, at the end of every discussion, the Ralbag gives you a list of the toelets, the different things that we learn. And one of the things he learns is that Kadosh Baruch Hu gives the reward to the people who deserve it, and of course punishes those who deserve that. Let's go on. B'nei Yehuda er ba'onim v'shelo shlosha nolad lo b'batshu ha'kananis v'hi er b'chor Yehuda ra b'nei Hashem ha'yimiteu. Pasuk Daled b'tamar kalato yaldalo et peretz v'et zarah kol b'nei Yehuda chamisha. This is a very weird kind of recap of the Yehuda story, and we're told that Yehuda had 5 sons. We know this story from Parshas Vayeshev. And when Yehuda is married to Batshua HaKananis, over there in Bereshis, it says Canaan, perhaps she's actually a Canaanite woman, and perhaps she's the daughter of a merchant, because Canaanim were so commonly known as merchants that they became synonymous, Canaani and merchant, which is a way of trying to, make a euphemism. He wasn't really married to a Canaanite, but we don't know. In any event, these 3 sons, right? It's a very interesting thing that happens here. It says, "Vayhi er b'chor Yehuda ra b'nei Hashem v'yimiteu." According to the Medrash, does not want to have. He marries Tamar, and he doesn't want to destroy her beauty by having her have children. So he commits a sin. Shiches arza. It says he does not complete his sexual act, and so he's killed. Now, the interesting thing is that Onan, okay, the second son, is guilty of the same sin and is killed for the same reason. And that's clear in Bereshis. However, it's not mentioned here, which is very interesting. And again, the differences between, other Sfarim and Divrei HaYamim, sometimes it's just a matter of practicality because it's not really a critical thing, like why Onan dies. We are told that in Bereshis that Onan is given as he's given Tamar for Yibum, and he does not want to. He knows that any child that he has with Tamar will be on the name of Er, who is the Bechor, and so he doesn't want to have children with Tamar. So he's also killed. Now, let's take a look at the story in Bereshis. See how somebody thinks so. Here we go. Okay. Now, but then, right? So Onan is just as bad as Er. So one possibility is that Er had no reason for what he did, and Onan had a sort of rationale. So perhaps that's why we're not talking about him as so terrible. And then there comes the whole story with Tamar, and Yehuda says, Sheila's too young, let's wait for Sheila. And Tamar sits quietly waiting for Sheila to grow up. And then Yehuda's wife dies, and she has this whole trick that she does for Yehuda to have him be with her, and she has two sons. There's a very big question here. If you look at the Divrei HaYamim, Rashi, now I mentioned last time, okay, that Rashi, Divrei HaYamim, is also called Meyuchas LaRashi. It's not necessarily Rashi, because, although it's called Rashi, it seems to be a different Rishon, and there are different references that he makes that make it clear that it's not actually Rashi. So some editions call it Miyuchas LaRashi, and some editions just call it Rashi. So for purposes of simplicity, we're just going to call it Rashi. And Rashi asks a question here. Tameh ani he'ach maskir binut zikinto shel David. I don't understand, right? In Pasuk Dalet, it says Tamar, his daughter-in-law, bore him these twins, Peretz and Zerah. And Rashi says, why is this mentioned here? It is not a nice thing. So in general, the whole genealogy of David HaMelech and all the stories that we see in Bereshis and further on are just so bizarre. I mean, it's like, what? I mean, let's go with Lot and his children by his daughters, and then we get to Yehuda and Tamar, and then there's Boaz and Ruth. There's a lot of shady stuff going on here. And so Rashi's saying, like, why are we saying Tamar Kalato? We can just say Tamar. We don't have to go into that. But there is Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky has a very interesting comment here, and it bases it on the Ramban. And apparently, and it really makes a lot of sense. This is one of the things where Rabbi Yaakov really, really makes sense. He says, before Matan Torah, the idea of Yibum was not the same Yibum that we see in the Torah. In the Torah, right, the idea of Yibum is one brother dies, so another brother marries the widow. Before Matan Torah, the idea of levirate marriage worked that when one son died, the father married the widow. So he would be able to have another son, so to speak, to replace the son that he lost. And this was common. And this was the idea. So therefore, the really correct person in those times to marry Tamar is not Onan and it's not Sheila. it's Yehuda himself. So if that was the custom and that was the way it was done, why doesn't Yehuda marry Tamar? So Rabbi Yaakov explains Yehuda's already married. And it wasn't considered an acceptable thing to take another wife unless there were really extenuating circumstances. So when Yehuda's wife dies, then he should have gone and married Tamar. However, he doesn't. Rabbi Yaakov says perhaps he intended to, but Tamar was not waiting around and she took the initiative. There was actually, I heard somebody mention a very beautiful discussion of this story by Soloveitchik, who says that it's interesting that in all these stories, which are so unsavory, like we said, shady stories, in each case you have something that seems very, very difficult and dark. So it seems as if there's, the daughters of Lot think the world is over, and they have this vision of like continuing the world. And Tamar, right, she thinks that like her possibility of having a child is over, so she takes this, bold action, and Ruth also. So that these women, Rav Soloveitchik describes that these women take an action to bring, light out of the darkness, and their faith and their courage and their hope, their emunah, is rewarded. It's an interesting, very interesting interpretation. Okay, and that whole Rabbi Yaakov would explain why back in Bereshis they're so determined to figure out which of the twins is the Bechor, and why. It also explains why Shelah doesn't take the Bechorah, because the children of Tamar are in place of heir, which means her children will go into the place of Bechor. And that's why it's important to know who is the Bechor, Peretz or Zerach. Okay, so we know that it's going to be Peretz. And now we're going to go into the genealogies of Peretz and Zerach. K. B'nei Peretz Chetzron v'Chamul, B'nei Zerach Zimri v'Eitan v'Hema v'Kalkol v'Dora, Kulam Chamisha. Okay, so we're going to stop off our say B'nei Peretz Chetzron v'Chamul. Now, if you remember the genealogy of David at the end of Megillat Ruth, we know that Yehuda, Peretz, Chetzron. This is where it goes, right? And so Chamul is not going to be part of this genealogy, and neither are the children of Zerach. But again, we have that same theme that we saw in Perek Aleph. We're going to talk about the people who are not so crucial to our, zeroing in on our, main focus. And we're going to take care of them, leave them on the side, and then go back to our main focus. So that's what happens here. So you have children of Zerach. Now, Zimri, if you recall, okay, let's go another pasuk and you'll see. Pasuk Zayin, B'nei Karmi, Achar Ochei Yisrael Asher Ma'al B'Cherim. Okay, so let's go to Yeshua for a moment to remind ourselves. Okay, in Yeshua chapter 7, okay, we have this cherem that Yeshua puts on the spoils of Yericho. No one's allowed to take the spoils of Yericho, and that's Kodesh. So a man by the name of Achan takes from the cherem, and here it says in the first pasuk in Perek Zayin, which is a very interesting generalization. The children of Israel betrayed the cherem, and Achan, the son of Carmi, son of Zad, son of Zerah, of the tribe of Yehuda, took from the cherem, and God was angry with the children of Israel. Now, this is a whole discussion, which we don't have time for. Why was God angry at all the people of Israel when it is only Achan? And when we studied Yoshua, we did discuss this at great length. Namely, at this point in time, Arvus has kicked in. That is, once Jewish people come to the land of Israel, we're all responsible for each other. So there's a certain amount of communal responsibility here. And because possibly there was some sort of, laxness in the air, and that people were talking about the cherem, and probably the cherem should not have happened. And that's why God is angry at the whole nation. And also Yeshua has a bit of blame here. Hashem, why did you make this cherem? That wasn't my idea. Anyway, Achan is the son of Carmi, his son is Zabdi, the son of Zerach. Now, getting back to our genealogy here, okay, Zerach's son Zimri seems to be associated with Zabdi. Zimri is, of course, not a nice name, and so he's given this not great name, but he's the ancestor of Achan. Now, Achan is called here Achar. We've switched the nun and the resh, and because he's an Ocher Israel, he is a troubler of Israel. 36 people died in the first battle of Ai because of what he did, and he is considered an Ocher Israel. I do want to point out that although he's mentioned here in this negative connotation, it's important to understand that when he is punished and taken, Yeshua says to him, Bini, my son, term of endearment, Simna kavod Lashem Elokei Israel, b'ten lo todah, v'hagedna li ma'asita, al tachachei mimeni. Yeshua says, Achan, tell us what happened, acknowledge it before God. Vayan Achan et Yeshua v'yomar nah, nochi chatasi Lashem Elokei Israel, kazot asiti. And Chazal say, because Achan admitted his sin, he does teshuva, and therefore he does have a share in the world to come. And it's important because when we're coming back to it, Divrei HaYamim, we want to understand why he's mentioned in this negative context. And there it is. We're told that he did teshuva. And so although he is punished in this world, he is forgiven in the next world. In any event, Zerach has 4 other sons, Eitan, Haman, Kalkol, Vodara, Kulam Hamisha. Now, these 5 sons are known for their wisdom, and here, in Malachim, when we're talking about Shlomo, Beitena Lokim Chachal Shlomo, Tvuna Be'ma'od, Rochav Le Kachol Shosvat Hayam. When, this is Perek in Lachem Aleph, when Shlomo was given all this wisdom, there's this interesting comment. Vayechka mikol adam me'etan ezrachi beheman bekalkol v'darda b'nei machol v'yishmo b'chol hagoyim savit. So these 4 sons of Zerach are noted that Shlomo was even wiser than all of them. And there was this very beautiful thought that these sons of Zerach were, Zerach was able to shine wisdom on them. In a certain sense, in Divrei HaYamim, the genealogies are so confusing and so convoluted, and sometimes I'll show you when we get to Kalev, the times are so crazy, it's hard to understand it. So in a certain sense, when we say the father of, sometimes it's not exactly the father of, it's a grandfather, a great-grandfather, and sometimes it's like a spiritual father of. The name Zerach means to shine, like the sun shines. So Zerach shone wisdom on the world. And it's like interesting, we should not get stuck in the descendants of Zerach. There was this one, Achan, and of course, there are the Mefarshim who say, well, it's because his mother was a Kanani, right? On the other hand, these other 4 are known as these great, wise people. And they're also, the Midrash connects them with these singers, the Leviim in the Beis HaMikdash, and specifically Eitan Eitan and Haman are called Ha'ezrachi. If you take off the Aleph, that's Hazarchi. Okay, so they're noted in specific Eitan in Peitet and Haman in Peichet of Tehillim, right? Maskil le'Eitan Ezrachi and Maskil le'Haman Ezrachi. And the Medrash says they're actually, that's a very beautiful Medrash, that it says that Shlomo is wiser than Mikol Adam, that's Adam HaRishon, right? Where are we? Right. Kol Adam is Adam, right? Eitan Ezrachi is Abraham. Haman is Moshe. Haman is Moshe. Kalkol is Yosef. You get that he was Mekalkel, and Darda is Dordeah. That is the generation of the desert who are Mahul. They were forgiven for the Egel Zaman. Very beautiful medrash about how we connect the wisdom of Shlomo with all the great ones that came before. Okay. Now we move back to the descendants of Zerah. B'nai Karmi Achar, B'nai Eitan Azariah. This is a typical thing that you'll see, even though there's only one son, it's going to be B'nai, like B'nai Dan Hushim. We have it in the Chumash. So it's a typical thing. B'nai Chetzron, Shenaladlo, et Yerachmiel, et Ram, et Klubai. Now, Chetzron has these three sons. I printed up a chart. Okay. Oh no, this is only part of it. This is Kalev and Chetzron. Okay, so it gets very confusing, and so I found this chart in one of my Sfarim, which is great. And this is the chart is the descendants of Kalev ben Chetzron. So Chetzron has three sons. Okay, let's go back there, and we'll come back to the chart in a minute. Yerachmiel and Ram and Kaluvai. Now, Ram is the one we want, okay? Because we know that David comes, the descendants. If you look at Ruth, so you see, right? Yehuda, Peretz, Chetzron, Ram, Aminadab, and we go on from there. So the son of Chetzron, who will be the ancestor of David, who is that pearl that we're looking for, is Ram. And so we start looking at, we're jumping back and forth between these three sons. So they're all very interesting. Yerachmiel, Ram, and Kluvai. And Ram, here we go to the Yishai David connection. Ram holidat Aminadab. Aminadab holidat Nachshon, Nesi b'nei Yehuda. This, all the Mepharshim agree. Nachshon was a prince in his own right, and this is giving glory to David HaMelech. Again, everything we do for the glory of David. Now, Yud Aleph, Nachshon is Salma, Salma is Boaz. Here we go. Very similar to the end of Ruth. Boaz Holid Yud Bet. Boaz Holid is Obed. Obed leads Yishai. Okay, so now we're right up until our pearl. Baskid Gimel Ishai. Here, Ish. Okay, instead of Yishai, Ishai. Holidet b'choro et Eliyav, Abinadav Hasheni, v'Shema Shlishi, Netanel Revi'i, Radai Chamishi, Otzmashi, David Hashvi'i. Okay, so we're going to get to all these questions, a lot of questions. Number one, wasn't David the eighth son? And why does David have a Yud here? And why Ishai and not Yishai? Okay, so let's backtrack for a moment and try to answer these questions. This is the lineage of David that we see at the end of Sefer Ruth, and we're focusing right in on Ram. Okay, we're going to go back to Yerachmiel and Kluvai in a minute. But we're first going right to Ram, who is the ancestor of David, and going right to that. Nachshon Nesi b'nei Yehuda, a great person in his own right, the one who jumped into the sea. Salma, same as Salmon and Salma with an hey. A lot of variations in spelling and names, but we get the general idea. Boaz is Obed, Obed is Yishai, Obed is a servant of God, and now Ishai, Obed is Bechoro, it's Eliyav. Now, we have met in Shmuel Aleph, Eliyav, Abinadab, and Shim'ah. We didn't know the names of Netanel, Radai, Otzem, the next three, but we did know that David was the eighth and not the seventh. So what has happened? Now, so this is why the Divrei HaYamim is a tough text. So if you go ahead, okay, let me just find the reference.
Rebbetzin Shurin, also, can I ask, is this the only place that it lists Hasheni, Hashlishi, Harivi'i? Wouldn't it just be, we would expect if it just said the names in order that they're talking about the first, second, third. So it seems unnecessary to put in the numbers of each son as well. I don't know if that appears anywhere else, but that seems strange to me.
It's a little strange, but it does seem to me it's sort of a kind of just, a drum roll because we're getting to
Yeah.
David. Now this is so
Building the
like now that we're
suspense.
getting to
Okay.
David, now you have to know the
Yeah.
first one was Elia. The second
Okay.
one, that's how it seems to me. I don't know if
Okay.
anyone discusses that, but like, yeah, it's a really strange one, really strange one.
Hmm.
But here I want to
Okay.
show you this one. Later on in chapter 27, okay, we find out that David is giving the leadership roles to different tribes. And Pasuk says, Yehuda, Elihu me'ache David. The prince from the tribe of Yehuda was Elihu, one of the brothers of David. So Chazal immediately jump on this and say, oh, that's the eighth brother. This is Elihu, because we don't have an Elihu in this list. So the eighth brother must be Elihu. But why are we stopping at the seventh? There are a number of very interesting discussions about why. And one of them is that seven is a great number. So we want him to be the seventh, even though he was the eighth. But seventh is significant. And once we get to David, we don't really care about Elihu because, like, who cares? We got to David. We got to our pearl. This is a strange thing that I've seen. Another thought is that one of his brothers had died. So now by now he is the seventh because one of them is gone. But then why are they listed? And maybe Elihu, right? Elihu's still alive when David becomes king. So it's a very, very odd stuff. It just seems like he's not important. I've seen various theories, and one is that he is the from a different mother, Elihu. So these are the seven sons from Yishai's wife. Okay, so first of all, let's just look at the other questions. Number one, David is spelled in Divrei HaYamim usually with a yud. The yud is given as also because that's the name of Hashem. So I think that anytime you add Hashem's name to someone's Hashem's name or number to a person's name, that is giving them chashivas. So that that could be why he is David, right? And let's talk about Ishai for a minute. So Ishai is interesting, right? Rashi says, Malay Aleph Klomar Ish Gibor Chayil, Ishai hu Ishai. So we have this idea of Yishai, and the Midrashim talk about Yishai in amazing ways. In the Gemara and Shabbos, right? There are the four people who never sinned, who are Binyamin ben Yaakov, Amram Abi Moshe, Yishai Abi David, Kila ben David, right? And why is it's not in here. Okay. So it says that he was coming in and going out with multitudes. Yishai was a very, very great person. And because he was an Ish is usually a term of power and greatness. And according to the Medrash, when David begins Sefer Tehillim, Ashrei Ha'ish, that he's referring to Yishai. There we go for Yishai. And then we go back right, to the children of Yishai. And here's something we don't do so often. We talk about David's um, sisters. Achiotehem, the sisters of these 7 or 8 sons. Tzruya, Abigail, Ubenei Tzruya, Abshai, Yoav, Asael, Shlosha. Abigail does Amasab, Abi, Amasa, Yetzer HaYishmaeli. Now, we're finding out the lineage of these people who are so important in David's kingship, right? The 3 sons of Tzruya, his sister. Now, we don't even know who their father is. It's not even mentioned because the greatness of these 3 people is that they were nephews of David. So, like, we don't so much care who the father is. Their mother was David's sister, and that's enough for you, okay? Avishai, Yoav, and Asael. Usually, Avishai is called in Divrei HaYamim Avshai. Same thing. Now, Abigail, who was not his wife, but his sister, she had a son named Amasa, and Amasa was Amasa's father is mentioned. His name is Yeser. Amasa ben Yeser. And he is also called HaYishmaeli, in some places HaYisraeli. And why is he called Yishmaeli? Another one of these strange things. And that is either that he lived in a place which was, kind of, an Ishmaelite place, like Obed Edom Agiti lived in Gat, but he was not a Plishti. That's one explanation. And the other is that there is a medrash which talks about the lineage of David, and Doeg is having a big argument with the people of Beis Midrash, and Doeg is saying he can't be the king. He's not even a Jew. And there's this whole back and forth because like Moab and whatever, and Doeg is like very sharp, and he's fooling everybody about the lineage of David. And along comes David's nephew, Amasa, the son of Yeser, and he says, I have studied this in the Beit Midrash of Shmuel of Ramah. Moavi is not allowed to come into the Kahal, but a Moaviyah is. Ammoni is not allowed. Ammonite is. And if anyone wants to argue with me, and according to the Medrash, he girded himself with a sword like a Yishmaeli. And that's why he's called Yetzer Yishmaeli. So we stopped our whole discussion of the children of Yishai in order to understand, the sons of Yishai, in order to understand who these important people were, that they were David's nephews. Okay, and now we're going to go back to Kalev. Now, the 3 sons of Chetzron that we mentioned were Yerachmiel and Ram and Kluvai. So Kluvai, basically everyone says this is Kalev. Kalev is Kluvai. Now, it becomes very strange in this Perek, like Kalev, the Kalev that we know, Kalev ben Yefuneh, it doesn't fit. The times are off. Because if Kalev is the son of Chetzron, Chetzron came down to Mitzrayim, and Chetzron would then be 160 years old when he had Kalev. And so the Medrash has a lot of weird stuff going on here, because it says clearly in the text that Kalev was 40. So at the time of the sin of the spy. So it doesn't make sense. He couldn't be 200 years old. So the Radak and the Rabbag specifically say there were 2 Kalevs. There was the Kalev son of Chetzron and the Kalev son of Yefuneh. Very strange, or it could be that it was one of those, Yehuda names that just came down, and they were actually descendants of each other. It's very, very strange, and one of these things in Divrei HaYamim that's very difficult. One way of answering it is that midrashically, it's all possible. It's the same person, and the Midrash says that he was called Yefuneh because he was poneh. He turned away from the sin of the spies. I don't know. It's very hard to answer that one. Okay, so now we're going to look at Kalev ben Chetzron. And then it gets very weird. This is why I want to give the chart. He, Kali ben Chetzron holidit Azuba Isha. That's Yeriot. I understand, like, Azuba is his wife. Is she his daughter? Who's Yeriot? Be'ela Baneha, those are her sons. Which one? Very strange. Yeshiv Shova Ardon. Pasuk is about Thomas Azuba Yikachlo Kolovitz Efrat, Batelo et Hur. Okay, but Hur, we recognize that name. We're coming into familiar territory. Yay! Hur Holiditz Uri, Uri Holiditz Betzalel, Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur. We know that guy. He's the guy who built the Mishkan. So there is a very important reason for going into this genealogy, because stop. This is a great person who interpreted the designs of God and made it come to life. So yay for all designers and artists. Okay, so let's take a look at the chart for a second, because it's a little clearer here. According to this chart, Azuva, Isha, the woman, is Kalev's first wife, and then he has Yesha, Shola, and Ardon with her, and Ephrat, his second wife, has Hur, who is the father of Uri and the grandfather of Betzalel, and Hur has another son named Kalev, and we're going to, okay, could be that's what we're saying, the Kalev, this Kalev, is a different Kalev. And what happens here, this whole section here, is kind of the end of this Perek, which kind of goes into all the names of all these people. And what's very interesting is that the names of the people do seem to be given over to the names of cities or towns in Yehuda. Okay, you see that Shoval is the father of Kiryat Yarim, which is Telstone. Salma is the father of Beit Lechem. And Harif is the father of Beit Gadir. Like, each of these people have created a town. Eitam is a place. And then we get into Sarah and Eshtaol, which are theoretically Don cities. And all these people have places, and all these place names we see later. Gedor, you have Tekoa coming up, all these interesting things. Meantime, what are we doing with Azuba and Yeriot? So, okay. Now the Medrash says, we're running out of time. This is like such crazy, fascinating stuff. Okay. Right. Kali ben Chetzron halidet Azuba Isha. Lafisha italo Isha sheshma Azuba lekach kinat shem bito Azuba Isha. And then she dies and he marries Ephrat. Right? But the Medrash says, okay, let's here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Azuba, and it's a really beautiful Medrash if you have the patience for it. Okay, Azuba is Miriam. Why was she called Azuba? Everybody abandoned her at the beginning because she was sickly. She wasn't attractive. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Nosa Isha L'Shem Shamayim Ma'ale Lev HaKatuv Ki'ilu Yalda. It's such a beautiful medrash. Along comes Kalev, the son of Chetzron. He is not looking for a beautiful wife. He is looking for a great woman. And he marries Miriam, even though she is Azuba. Nobody else, she's abandoned, no one's interested in her because she is sickly, right? Yeriot, she's called because her face was pale like curtains. And it says, Ela baneha, these are her sons, Al tikre baneha, Ela boneha. Yesha sheyisha is atzmo, shovav sheshiva b'tz yitzro, va'ardan sherodas yitzro. Right? Some people say, Hayu baneha tomim leberet. In other words, according to the Medrash, all of these names in this pasuk are all the development of Miriam. She started life Azuba, Yeriot, abandoned, sickly, pale. Kalev marries her because he's looking for the greatness of this woman. He's not looking for outer beauty. And because he marries her L'Shem Shamayim, it is as if he was her father in a certain sense because he raised her up. And he was such a great person. Now, Medrash is looking at him as the Kalev of the spies and says, Yesher, his son, because he made himself straight. Shovav, because he conquered his Yetzer Hara, and Ardon, because he was stronger than his Yetzer. And some say Ardon because for the same language as Vered, because as his relationship with Miriam developed, she became beautiful like a rose. And his second wife, Ephrat, is also Miriam. And why is she called Ephrat? Okay, I'm going to get out of this medrash. She's called Ephrat because from the language of Priya and Rivia, because she was the midwife in Mitzrayim and she helped the children of Israel be fruitful. And then she had the son Hur. Medrash teaches us a lot. This Medrash teaches us that when you look for a person to marry, it should be for the inner beauty and not the outer beauty. And you have this corroborated in the Eishes Chayil, Sheker Achein, Behevel Yofi, Isha Yirat Hashem Talal. Contrary-wise, we're going to run ahead here because I want you to see the opposite idea here. Afterwards come Chetzron, who married a daughter of Machir, who was Menashe, and they had 60 cities. She had a son named Skuv, and Skuv was the father of Yair. He had 23 cities, and Geshur and Aram took those cities, and altogether there were 60 cities taken by Geshur, and someone's not muted, and all of these were taken over by Geshur. And David, somebody please mute yourself, please. Okay, somebody took the 60 cities, and that was recaptured by David, and he made a deal with the king of Geshur, and he married his daughter, and that was Macha, the daughter of the king of Geshur, and that was the mother of Avshalom. And after Chetzron died, right, his wife, he married Avia, and she had Ashur, who was a father of Tekoa. All the places become their descendants. But I just want to give you the contrast here, because we're really running out of time. Okay, so it's like hidden, there's like hidden gems in every pasuk here. When you see all these interesting midrashim about the beautiful relationship between Kalev and Miriam, and how he marries her for her spiritual greatness, and she becomes this beautiful mother in Israel, right? And then you see Rachmiel. So he seems to have his first wife, and he has Chetzron, Ram, like his brother, Buna, Oren, Otzim. Then he marries another woman, Isha Acheret, and her name is Atara. Now, Atara means a crown. It's a beautiful name. But according to Chazal, right, Atara is not Jewish. Isha Acheret. And why does he marry her? Because it says here, but Lehitaterba, he wanted to crown himself with her beauty, right? Yafa b'sarit, says she was a beautiful princess. Now, this is the first recorded history of a trophy wife. He marries this woman because she's beautiful and aristocratic, and her son is Ona, which is related to Onain, which is the status of a person who's mourning, and she brings sorrow into the world. She's not Jewish. And here you have the contrast to Kalev and Miriam, and you have Yerachmiel and his wife, his other wife, Atara, brings sorrow into the world. If you follow the yichus here, and we don't have the time to go through each pasuk here, but go right down here, right? One of his descendants was a man named Sheshan. He didn't have any daughters. He didn't have his sons. He only had daughters, and he married his daughter to his Egyptian slave, who was named Yarcha. And Yarcha has a son named Atai. Keep going through this very interesting genealogy, and we get to Elishama. And that's where we stop. Elishama was the grandfather of Yishmael ben Netanya. Okay, if you recall, Yishmael ben Netanya was the descendant of the house of the kingship who murdered Gedaliah and many other people in cold blood because he wanted to be king. And this was a descendant of this very misguided shidduch with a woman who he married who was not Jewish. He married her for her looks. There's very hidden messages, not hidden, not so deep in here, about what sort of person you should look for when you get married. And then we go back to Kalev, the brother of Yerachmiel, and we go through his descendants. And there are all these people who are, again, building towns, building neighborhoods. We're out of time here, so I'm just going to finish up here. And Pilegesh Kalev Macha, Shever, Turchana, all these places. This is building the house of Yehuda, all the places in Yehuda. Kiryat Yearim, Beit Lechem, Gader. You see Kiryat Yearim, Tekoa, Mishpachot Kiryat Yearim. And also they had a relationship to the Tzara and Eshtal. We'll find out later that the mother of Shimshon was actually one of the descendants of Yehuda, although Manoach himself was from Dan. And then you have Bnei Salma, Bet Lechem, Netofa, till today, Netofa. And the last pasuk, Umishpachot Sofrim, the families of the scribes, Yoshve Yavetz, they went to live with Yavetz, Shivasim, Shemasim, Suchasim, Hema Kinim Habame, Machmas Avi Beitz Recha. So we're just getting another hint here, right? That these people, Yavetz is another name for Asnei ben Kenaz. Asnei ben Kenaz was great Talmid Chacham, the first shofet. And who are the people who are following him around? Great teachers and students who want to learn Torah from him, because his Torah was so amazing. And some among them are Kinim, descendants of Yisrael, who follow Yavetz to learn Torah from him. You see here that the yichus that we're really looking for is the yichus of spiritual greatness. How these are descendants of Moshe Rabbeinu, who are the spiritual fathers of David, although Moshe is a Levi, but Moshe's father-in-law, Moshe and Zipporah, some of these families followed Yavetz, and they lived with, and of course, yes, Othniel was from Yehuda. And we see here, one of the themes here that's running through is that the spiritual greatness descends through the people and is passed down. And unfortunately, the converse is true. The people who bring great disgrace are also spiritual descendants of difficult stories, like the story of Rachmiel and his trophy wife, the story of Achan, who was also Yehuda's marriage to a person who was not Jewish. And so we have a little bit of Knani, it's a little bit of this, watch how the genealogies go. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. I think we have to sort of stop here at a time. Okay, so we can stop the screen share. If anyone has questions, hi, Ravia. How are you doing? Oh, there's something
Thank you.
so so intense about these prakim. I was trying to do a perek each time, but like there are so many
People.
yeah, there's so many names, and every name is a story, and every story has to be connected to and explained in view of other stories that we have. And it just becomes a lot. It's really, but I find it actually fascinating. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Esther. I appreciate it as always. Good to see
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to say thank you, Rebbetzin Shurin. It's great to learn Torah from you again. It's good to see
It's
you.
great
Please
to
send
see
my
you.
regards to Rabbi Shurin.
Okay, for
That,
sure.
that was
Okay.
amazing that you
Bye.
made it through that long perek with all those names in the time. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ren.
We're
Thank
saying
you.
that.
Thank you.
That was.
Okay. Is that you?
Thank you.
All right.
Night.
Good night.